My name is Kendra Wilson, 34 years old head nurse at Memorial Hospital's pediatric unit in Boston. After 12 years of what I thought was a happy marriage with James and raising our amazing 11-year-old son Noah, everything changed in an instant. Last Friday, I decided to surprise my mum with a visit to her countryside home, but when I pulled up to her gate and saw my husband's black truck parked there, when he was supposed to be on a business trip in Chicago, my heart stopped. I just knew something was terribly wrong. Before we start, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and join me as I share how my entire life unraveled that day. I've always had a complicated relationship with my mother, Linda. We're close in that unavoidable mother-daughter way, but there's always been a tension between us. Linda is 58, opinionated, and has never been shy about telling me when she thinks I'm making a mistake, which according to her is quite often. "Kendra, you work too many hours," she'd say during our weekly phone calls. "That boy needs his mother at home." Or, "That house you bought is too much for you to maintain. You should have listened to James about the other property." Always with that slight tone of disappointment that made me feel like I was still 14 years old. Despite this, I wanted Noah to have a close relationship with his grandmother, especially since my father passed away 10 years ago. Linda lived alone in a beautiful countryside home in New Hampshire, about 2 hours from our house in suburban Boston. It was a charming white colonial with blue shutters surrounded by maple trees that turned magnificent shades of red and orange in the fall. Noah loved visiting, especially because Linda spoiled him rotten with homemade cookies and fewer rules than we had at home. James and I met 13 years ago at a hospital fundraiser. I was a newly graduated nurse volunteering at the event. He was there representing his family's real estate company, Wilson Properties. James was handsome, confident, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. Not many guys I dated wanted to hear about nursing school or hospital protocols, but James asked thoughtful questions and remembered details about my job when we met for coffee the following week. "You're different from other women I've met," he told me on our third date. "You have real passion for what you do." I fell hard and fast. After a year of dating, he proposed during a weekend trip to Cape Cod, and we married 6 months later in a beautiful ceremony that Linda helped plan to perfection. We built a life together in a colonial-style house in a good school district with a spacious backyard where Noah could play. James continued to grow his position in the family business, eventually becoming one of their top-selling agents. I advanced in my nursing career, eventually becoming head nurse in the pediatric unit. From the outside, we had everything: successful careers, a beautiful home, and a bright, loving son. Noah was particularly close to his father. James coached his little league team, taught him to fish, and they had special Saturday morning breakfasts together at a local diner when I worked weekend shifts. It always warmed my heart to see them together, two peas in a pod with the same warm brown eyes and easy smile. But over the past few months, I'd noticed subtle changes in James. He started working later, his phone would buzz constantly with texts that he'd quickly dismiss, and he seemed distracted during family dinners. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd give me a quick, "just busy with work," or "tired from showing houses all day." I believed him because I wanted to, and because my own job had become increasingly stressful. The pediatric unit had been understaffed for months. I was pulling extra shifts, handling administrative duties, and still trying to provide quality care to our young patients. Coming home exhausted, I didn't have the energy to push when James seemed distant. I figured we were both just going through a busy period and would reconnect when things calmed down. That Friday had been particularly difficult at the hospital. We'd lost a young patient to leukemia, a 7-year-old girl I'd grown attached to over her months of treatment. I came home emotionally drained to find Noah playing video games and James packing for a 3-day real estate conference in Chicago. "I wish you didn't have to go this weekend," I said, as he folded dress shirts into his suitcase. "I know, babe, but this conference only happens once a year. Great networking opportunity." He kissed my forehead quickly, continuing to pack. I'll make it up to you when I get back. After James left early Saturday morning, I decided Noah and I needed a change of scenery. How about we surprise Grandma with a visit? I suggested over breakfast. Noah's face lit up immediately. Can we stay overnight? Can I bring my new Switch game to show her? Sure, sweetie. Pack an overnight bag and we'll head out in an hour. I called the hospital to make sure they could cover my Sunday shift, which thankfully they could. I didn't call my mother. Linda loved surprises and spontaneous visits. Always put her in a good mood. As Noah packed his backpack with games and a change of clothes, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. A day away from our house, away from the hospital, was exactly what we needed. Little did I know that decision would change everything. The drive to my mother's house was beautiful that late spring day. The trees were lush with new leaves and wildflowers dotted the roadside. Noah chattered excitedly beside me in the passenger seat, listing all the things he wanted to do at Grandma's house. Do you think the tire swing is still there? And can we make s'mores if we stay overnight? Do you think Grandma will let me stay up late? I smiled, glancing at him briefly before returning my eyes to the road. The swing should still be there, and yes to s'mores if Grandma has the ingredients. And you know Grandma always lets you stay up at least 30 minutes past your bedtime. Awesome! Noah pumped his fist, then returned to the handheld game he'd brought for the drive. I turned onto the long gravel driveway that led to my mother's house, the tires crunching beneath us. The property came into view, the white house with blue shutters, the large oak tree with the tire swing, the carefully tended flower beds that were my mother's pride and joy. And then I saw it, a black Ford F-150 truck with the Wilson Properties logo on the door, parked right next to my mother's silver Volvo. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. James's truck. The truck that should have been parked at the airport while he attended a real estate conference in Chicago. Hey, that's Dad's truck, Noah said excitedly, putting down his game. Is Dad here too? My mind raced. Maybe there was a simple explanation. Maybe the conference was cancelled last minute. Maybe he came to visit Linda for some reason and wanted to surprise us later. But why wouldn't he have called me? Why would he have lied about going to Chicago? I'm not sure, honey, I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. Let me check what's going on first. Okay, I parked my car behind my mother's a short distance from James's truck. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Stay in the car for a minute, Noah, I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. I want to surprise Grandma and Dad. But I want to surprise them too, Noah protested. Just give me 2 minutes, then you can come in, I promised, forcing a smile. I want to see their faces when they realize we're all here together. Noah seemed satisfied with this explanation and returned to his game. I stepped out of the car, my legs feeling like jelly beneath me. Instead of going to the front door, I found myself moving quietly around the side of the house. Something didn't feel right, and some instinct told me not to announce our presence yet. My mother's living room windows faced the side yard. The curtains were partially open and I could see movement inside. Slowly, I approached, staying close to the hedge that ran along the house. When I reached the window, I crouched slightly to remain out of sight, and that's when I heard their voices. She's become so wrapped up in that job of hers, my mother was saying. I've told her for years that she works too much. A boy needs his mother at home more. That's part of the problem, James's voice replied, clear and unmistakable. But honestly, Linda, it's been broken for a long time. We just don't connect anymore, haven't for years. I froze, barely breathing. What was he talking about, years? I never thought she was quite right for you, my mother said, and I felt like I'd been slapped. You could have done so much better than my daughter James. You've always been too good for her. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from making a sound. My own mother. The betrayal was like a physical pain in my chest. Alicia understands me, James continued. We connected right away at the hospital fundraiser last fall. She's younger, she doesn't have all this baggage. Alicia. The name hit me like a thunderbolt. Alicia Mendez, a nurse who had transferred to our unit 6 months ago, pretty single in her early 30s. We'd been friendly. I'd even invited her to our home for a barbecue last month. The memory of her and James laughing by the grill suddenly took on a sinister new meaning. "Are you sure about this?" my mother asked. "Divorce is messy and expensive." Divorce, the word echoed in my head, making me dizzy. James was planning to divorce me, and he was discussing it with my mother before even talking to me. "I've thought it through," James said confidently. "I've already moved some money into separate accounts. After the family vacation next month, I'm going to tell her it's over. That will give me time to get everything in order." "What about Noah?" My mother's voice was concerned, but not for me, for James and his plans. "That's the hardest part," James sighed. "He's going to be devastated, but kids are resilient, right? And he'll still see both of us." "I can help with Noah," my mother offered. "He loves spending time here. I could talk to him, help him understand that sometimes adults need to make difficult decisions." They were already planning how to turn my son against me. My own mother was conspiring with my cheating husband. "Thanks, Linda. You've always been so supportive," James said warmly. "More like a friend than a mother-in-law." "Well, soon I won't be your mother-in-law anymore," Linda replied with a light laugh that cut through me like a knife. "But I hope we'll always be friends, James. You're the son I never had." I'd heard enough. More than enough. Backing away from the window, I moved silently around the house to where Noah waited in the car, completely unaware that his world was about to shatter, just like mine had. When I got back to the car, Noah looked up expectantly. "Can I go in now?" I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. My hands were shaking, and I could feel sweat beading on my forehead despite the mild spring air. My mind was spinning with what I'd just heard. But somehow I had to protect Noah from this, at least until I could figure out what to do. "Change of plans, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "Grandma isn't feeling well today." Noah's face fell. "But Dad's truck is here. Is Dad taking care of her?" Quick, I needed a believable lie. "Yes, Dad came to help Grandma with some house repairs, and he just called me to say she's not up for visitors right now. She might have a touch of flu." "But we drove all this way," Noah protested, "and I wanted to show her my new game." "I know I'm disappointed too," I said, starting the car. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely turn the key. "But we don't want to get sick, right? How about we go get some ice cream instead, and we can plan another visit when Grandma's feeling better?" Ice cream was always a reliable distraction for Noah. He looked disappointed, but nodded. "Can we get banana splits?" "Absolutely, with extra whipped cream." As I backed the car up and turned around in the driveway, I was careful to control my breathing to keep my face neutral. Inside, I felt like I was dying. 12 years of marriage, and James had been planning to leave me. My own mother was encouraging him, had apparently never thought I was good enough for him and Alicia. Someone I worked with every day, someone I'd welcomed into my home. How long had it been going on, the hospital fundraiser last fall? James had said. 8 months of lies, of coming home to me and our son while seeing another woman. 8 months of my mother knowing and saying nothing. On the drive to the ice cream shop, I operated on autopilot. Noah kept talking about his game, completely unaware that his mother's world had just imploded. I made appropriate noises in response, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the conversation I'd overheard, looking for any possible interpretation other than the obvious one. There wasn't any. At the ice cream parlor, I watched Noah dig into his banana split with enthusiasm, chocolate sauce smeared on his chin, this beautiful boy who idolized his father. How would this affect him? James had said he'd been unhappy for years. Had Noah picked up on that tension without me realizing it? Had I been so busy with work that I'd missed the signs of my marriage falling apart? No, I realized with sudden clarity. This wasn't my fault. James had made choices to cheat, to lie, to conspire with my mother behind my back. I hadn't been perfect, but I'd been committed to our marriage, to our family. The rage began to build beneath my shock and pain. "Mum, you're not eating your ice cream," Noah pointed out. "It's melting." I looked down at my untouched Sundae vanilla ice cream, now a soupy mess. "I guess I'm not as hungry as I thought." I said, pushing the bowl toward him. Do you want mine too? Noah grinned. Really, you never let me have two desserts. Special occasion, I managed to say. During the drive home, I considered my options. I could confront James immediately, but what would that accomplish? He'd just deny everything, and I had no actual proof beyond what I'd overheard. And there was Noah to consider. I didn't want him to witness an explosive confrontation. No, I needed to be strategic. James had said he planned to ask for the divorce after our family vacation next month. He'd mentioned moving money to separate accounts. I needed to protect myself and Noah, which meant I needed information. When we got home, I suggested Noah invite his best friend Tyler over to play video games. Once the boys were settled in the basement rec room, I went to our home office and turned on James's computer. We knew each other's passwords, or at least I thought we did, but when I tried to log in, I discovered he'd changed his password. That itself was telling. I tried several variations of his usual password before finally getting lucky with a combination of Alicia's name and birth date, which I knew from hospital records. The fact that he'd used her information as his password was another knife to the heart. Once in, I methodically searched through his emails, his browser history, his documents. The evidence of his betrayal was everywhere once I knew what to look for. Emails to Alicia with hotel reservations, text message backups full of intimate exchanges, and most disturbing financial records showing transfers to accounts I knew nothing about. Over the past 6 months, James had moved nearly $70,000 from our joint savings into a private account, money that was meant for Noah's college fund, for our retirement, for our future together. He'd been systematically hiding assets in preparation for leaving us. I took screenshots of everything, forwarded key emails to myself, and made notes of account numbers and amounts. Then I carefully logged out, making sure to leave no trace of my investigation. By the time James returned home Sunday evening, I had composed myself enough to greet him normally. He came through the door with his suitcase, looking tired but relaxed. How was Chicago? I asked, watching his face carefully. Not a flicker of guilt showed as he launched into a detailed account of a conference that he'd never attended. Great networking opportunity, he concluded. Though I missed you guys, of course. We missed you too, I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. Noah's upstairs finishing homework. He'll be glad to see you. James gave me a quick kiss on the cheek before heading upstairs. It took every ounce of self-control not to flinch away from his touch. That night, lying beside him in bed as he slept peacefully, I stared at the ceiling and made my plan. First thing in the morning, I would start gathering the evidence I needed, and then I would make sure James and my mother couldn't hurt us anymore. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own life. Every day after my shift at the hospital, I would work on gathering more information, building my case piece by piece. First, I opened my own separate bank account and transferred my latest paycheck into it instead of our joint account. It wasn't much compared to what James had squirreled away, but it was a start. I also applied for my own credit card, something I hadn't needed in years since we shared all accounts. Looking through our financial documents more thoroughly, I discovered James had been moving small amounts, consistently, amounts he probably thought I wouldn't notice, since I usually left the financial management to him. Over time, these transfers added up to a significant sum. He'd been planning this for longer than I'd initially thought. I contacted our investment advisor under the pretense of planning for Noah's education and discovered James had recently made changes to our retirement accounts, removing me as a beneficiary on several investments. The advisor seemed uncomfortable sharing this information, which made me wonder if James had told him we were having marital problems. Is everything okay between you and James? He asked carefully. Everything's fine, I lied smoothly. Just doing some financial planning of my own. Next came the hardest part, confronting Alicia. I couldn't avoid her at work, but I watched her closely, noting how she always seemed to find reasons to check her phone around lunchtime, how she mentioned weekend plans that seemed vague and unspecific. 3 days after discovering the affair, I followed her to the hospital cafeteria during our lunch break. She was sitting alone, texting someone with a small smile on her face. I knew exactly who was on the other end of that conversation. I sat down across from her without asking permission. She looked up, startled, quickly, putting her phone screen down on the table. "Kendra, I didn't see you there." "Clearly," I said, keeping my voice low and controlled. "You were too busy texting my husband." Her face went pale, then flushed red. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "I don't know what you're—" "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't insult me by lying. I know everything, Alicia. The hotel meetings, the weekend trips, when he's supposedly at conferences, all of it." Tears welled in her eyes. "Kendra, I'm so sorry. He told me your marriage was over in all but name. He said you'd agreed to separate, but were waiting to file the papers." Another lie from James. "That's not true. He told you what you wanted to hear." "He said he loves me," she whispered, "that he's never felt this way about anyone." "I'm sure he did," I replied, feeling oddly calm. "Did he also tell you about the other women?" Her head snapped up. "What other women?" I was bluffing, but her reaction told me my instinct was correct. "You're not the first, Alicia. 3 years ago, it was a real estate client. Before that, his administrative assistant. James has a pattern." Alicia's face crumpled. "He promised me. He said once he leaves you." "He's been telling you he's leaving me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from what I'd overheard at my mother's house. She nodded miserably. "After your family vacation next month. He said everything's arranged." "Do you love him?" I asked, genuinely curious. She looked down at her hands. "I thought I did. Now I don't know, I feel so stupid." "He has that effect on people," I said, standing up. "Including me." As I walked away, she called after me, "Kendra, wait." "What are you going to do?" I turned back. "I'm going to protect myself and my son. I suggest you do the same. James isn't who either of us thought he was." After Alicia, I turned to our friends. Carefully, without revealing what I knew, I asked questions about James's behavior when I wasn't around. Most were surprised and insisted James was always talking about me, and Noah always seemed like a devoted husband and father. But 2 friends, after some hesitation, admitted they'd seen James behaving questionably. At the Martins' New Year's party, my friend Rachel finally confessed. "I saw him getting very friendly with someone in the coat room. I didn't see who it was, and I figured maybe it was you, but—" "But you knew it wasn't," I finished for her. She nodded, looking miserable. "I should have told you, but I wasn't sure, and James has always seemed so devoted to you. I thought maybe I was misinterpreting something." Our neighbour Tom was more direct. "I've seen his truck parked overnight at an apartment complex in Brookline a few times when you were working night shifts. I assumed you knew he was visiting someone." Each new revelation was another blow, but also another piece of evidence. By the end of the week, I'd compiled a comprehensive file: financial records, witness statements, text message, screenshots, everything I could find that documented James's deception. Finally, I made an appointment with Michael Torres, a divorce attorney recommended by a doctor I trusted at the hospital. After reviewing my evidence, he looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and admiration. "You've done impressive work here, Kendra. Most people come to me with suspicions. You've brought me a case." "Will it be enough?" I asked. "More than enough," he assured me. "Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state, but his financial deception will absolutely factor into asset division, and we can use this to negotiate a favorable custody arrangement." "Noah is my priority," I said firmly. "I won't use him as a pawn, but I want to make sure James can't take him away from me." "With what you've shown me, that's not going to happen," Michael promised. "Now we need to talk strategy." I left the attorney's office with a plan. In the meantime, I would continue gathering evidence, secure my finances as much as possible, and prepare emotionally for the confrontation I knew was coming. I also scheduled an appointment with Dr. Williams, a child psychologist, to get advice on how to eventually tell Noah about the divorce with minimal trauma. The most painful part was maintaining normalcy at home. Each night, I made dinner, helped Noah with homework, and engaged in small talk with James, all while knowing our marriage was a sham. Each time he kissed me goodbye in the morning or asked about my day, I had to resist the urge to scream the truth in his face. But I held firm to my plan. James had been calculating in his betrayal, and I would be equally calculating in my response. When I finally confronted him, I would be ready. 1 week after discovering James's betrayal, I decided it was time for the confrontation. I had gathered all my evidence, secured my finances as best I could, and prepared myself emotionally for what would surely be a devastating conversation. I arranged for Noah to have a sleepover at his friend Tyler's house, telling him it was a reward for his good grades. In reality, I couldn't bear the thought of him overhearing what would likely become an ugly argument. After dropping Noah off, I returned home and carefully arranged my evidence on the dining room table, bank statements showing the hidden transfers, screenshots of text messages between James and Alicia, statements from friends who had seen him with other women. I even had a calendar marking the dates of his supposed business trips, alongside credit card statements showing hotel charges in our own city. When James came home from work, I had dinner waiting his favourite steak and roasted potatoes. He seemed pleased, kissing my cheek before washing up. "Where's Noah?" he asked, noticing the table set for two. "Sleepover at Tyler's," I replied, keeping my voice casual. "I thought we could use a night to ourselves. We haven't really connected lately." James smiled, seemingly relieved. "That's a great idea. Work has been so hectic lately." We ate dinner with casual conversation, James telling me about his day, showing properties to a difficult client, while I nodded and asked appropriate questions. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he must hear it, but he noticed nothing unusual. After dinner, I suggested we have coffee in the dining room, where I'd left my evidence covered by a tablecloth. James followed me, still chatting about an upcoming property listing. "James," I interrupted him gently, "I need to talk to you about something important." His expression shifted slightly concern, but with an undercurrent of wariness. "What's up? Is everything okay with Noah?" "Noah's fine," I assured him. "This is about us, about our marriage." He tensed visibly. "What about our marriage?" I took a deep breath and removed the tablecloth, revealing the carefully arranged documents. "I know about Alicia," I said quietly. "I know about the money you've been hiding. I know about all of it, James." His face went through a series of expressions: shock, denial, anger, calculation. He attempted to laugh it off. "What are you talking about? What is all this?" "Please don't insult me by lying," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "Last Saturday, when you were supposedly at a conference in Chicago, Noah and I went to surprise my mother with a visit. I saw your truck at her house." His face paled. "Kendra, I heard you, James. I heard everything. Your plans to leave me after our vacation next month. How you've been seeing Alicia since the hospital fundraiser last fall. How my own mother thinks you're too good for me." James slumped into a chair, running his hands through his hair. For a moment, he seemed genuinely regretful, but when he looked up, his expression had hardened. "If you'd been a better wife, it wouldn't have come to this," he said coldly. "Always at the hospital, always too tired for me, for us. What did you expect?" "I expected honesty," I replied. "I expected the man I married to talk to me if he was unhappy, not sneak around behind my back with a colleague half my age." "Alicia understands me," he shot back. "She makes time for me. She appreciates me." "Does she appreciate that you've cheated on every woman you've ever been with?" I asked. "Does she know about the others before her?" His eyes narrowed. "What others? The client 3 years ago. Your assistant before that. Did you think I didn't know?" This was partially a bluff based on what I'd pieced together, but his reaction confirmed my suspicions. "You didn't know anything," He scoffed, but his confident facade was cracking. You've been making up stories. I have statements from Rachel, from Tom, from others who saw you, I said, sliding forward the written accounts I'd collected. And I have these. I pushed forward the bank statements. $70,000, James. Our money. Money for Noah's future. I earned that money, he snapped. We both did, I corrected him, and a court will see it that way too. The mention of court seemed to bring him up short. You've talked to a lawyer. For the first time, he looked worried. I've done more than talk. I've filed preliminary paperwork. My attorney has copies of everything you see here. Just then, the doorbell rang. James and I stared at each other, the tension thick between us. Are you expecting someone? James asked suspiciously. I wasn't, and the interruption annoyed me. I went to the door, opening it to find my mother standing there. Mom, I said flatly, not bothering to hide my anger. What are you doing here? James called me, she said, pushing past me into the foyer. He said you've been acting strange all week, and he was worried about you. James appeared in the hallway behind me. Linda, thank God you're here. Kendra's lost her mind. She's making wild accusations, threatening me with lawyers. My mother looked between us, her expression concerned, but clearly siding with James. Kendra, honey, what's going on? James loves you, whatever you think is happening. I was at your house last Saturday, I interrupted. I heard everything, your conversation with James about how I was never good enough for him, how you're helping him plan to leave me. My mother's face drained of colour. You misunderstood. Don't, I said, raising my hand to stop her. Don't lie to me anymore, either of you. We moved to the living room, the three of us forming a tense triangle. James tried to position himself beside my mother, presenting a united front against me, but I refused to be intimidated. You've always thought I was second-rate, I said to my mother. Nothing I did was ever good enough. But to actively help my husband cheat on me, plan to leave me, that's a level of betrayal I never imagined even from you. That's not fair, my mother protested. I was just trying to help James through a difficult time. He's been unhappy for so long. And you never thought to talk to me, to suggest counselling, to do anything that might actually help our marriage, instead of encouraging him to destroy it. You wouldn't have listened, she said defensively. You never listened to me. Because your advice has always been to put myself last, I exploded. To accept less than I deserve, to let James control everything because you think he's so perfect. James tried to interject. Linda was just being supportive when I needed someone to talk to. You had a wife to talk to, I snapped at him, but instead you chose to talk to my mother about divorcing me while sleeping with my colleague. My mother looked confused. What colleague? James hadn't told her about Alicia, I realised. He'd been manipulating both of us. James has been having an affair with a nurse I work with, I told her, for 8 months. While planning to divorce me and hide our assets. My mother turned to James, shock evident on her face. Is this true? You said you and Kendra had grown apart, not that you were involved with someone else. James looked cornered. It's not what you think, Linda. Alicia and we connected when things with Kendra were already falling apart. Because you were already cheating, I cried. You can't grow apart from someone who's lying to your face every day. The confrontation continued to escalate, with James eventually dropping all pretense of regret. Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Alicia. Yes, I was planning to leave after the vacation. What's the big deal? Marriages end every day. At least I was trying to do it in a way that wouldn't hurt Noah. By lying to him too, by manipulating my mother into helping you turn him against me. The anger that had been building for a week finally burst forth. You're not concerned about hurting Noah. You're concerned about your image, about coming out of this looking like the good guy, while you rob us blind and start your new life. In his fury, James started revealing even more than I'd already discovered. Other accounts I hadn't found plans to move in with Alicia, even discussions they'd had about having children together. She's young enough to give me the daughter you never could. He spat, hitting a particularly painful point. We'd tried for a second child for years after Noah enduring 2 miscarriages before giving up. At that cruel remark, even my mother gasped. James, That's a terrible thing to say. It's the truth, he sneered. Kendra's always been second-rate as a wife, as a mother, probably as a nurse too. The only reason I stayed this long was for Noah. The room fell silent after his outburst. In that moment, seeing the pure contempt on his face, I realized something profound. I didn't love this man anymore. Maybe I hadn't for a long time, but had been too busy, too committed to our family to acknowledge it. I want you out of this house tonight, I said quietly. My attorney will contact you tomorrow. Until then, stay away from me and stay away from Noah. You can't kick me out of my own house, James protested. Actually, she can, my mother said, surprising me. The house is in both your names, and after what you just said, James, I think you should leave. James looked between us, disbelieving that my mother had finally sided with me. You're taking her side now after everything. I'm not taking sides, my mother said, though her stance beside me suggested otherwise. But what you said about the miscarriages, that was cruel, James. I didn't raise you to be cruel. You didn't raise him at all, I pointed out. He's not your son, Mum. He's your son-in-law who's been lying to both of us. James grabbed his keys and wallet from the side table. Fine, I'll go to Alicia's. At least she appreciates me. He stormed toward the door, then turned back. This isn't over, Kendra. I'll get my fair share and I'll get Noah too. No judge is going to give full custody to a mother who's never home. After he slammed out my mother, and I stood in silence for a long moment. Finally she spoke. Kendra, I don't know what to say. I never knew about Alicia about the money. He told me you two had grown apart naturally, that you were focused on your career instead of your family. And you believed him without ever talking to me, I said, the hurt evident in my voice. You took his side automatically, just like you always have. I thought I was helping, she said weakly. You weren't helping, Mum. You were interfering in my marriage based on partial information from a man who was actively betraying me. What kind of mother does that? Tears welled in her eyes. I've made a terrible mistake. Can you ever forgive me? I didn't know the answer to that question. The wounds were too fresh, the betrayal too deep. I don't know, Mum. Right now, I need you to leave too. I need to figure out what to tell Noah. As she gathered her purse, she turned to me one last time. For what it's worth, I was wrong about you, Kendra. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was something, a small acknowledgement that perhaps finally my mother was seeing me clearly. After she left, I sat alone in the silent house, emotionally exhausted, but oddly relieved. The confrontation had gone even better than I'd hoped. James had revealed more than I'd known. My mother had witnessed his true nature, and I had stood my ground. For the first time in a week, I felt like I might actually survive this. Now came the hardest part, telling my son that his perfect family was about to change forever. The weeks following the confrontation were some of the most difficult of my life. The morning after James left, I had to tell Noah that his father wouldn't be coming home for a while. I picked him up from Tyler's house early, steeling myself for the conversation I'd rehearsed all night. When we got home, I sat him down on the living room couch. Noah, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something important, I began, my heart breaking at his innocent expression. Dad and I are having some problems, and we've decided we need some time apart. His brown eyes widened with confusion and fear. Like a divorce, Tyler's parents got divorced last year. Yes, honey, like a divorce. There was no point sugarcoating it. Dad is going to be staying somewhere else for a while. But why? Noah asked, his voice small. Did something bad happen? Did I do something wrong? No, absolutely not, I said firmly, taking his hands in mine. This has nothing to do with you. Dad and I have grown-up problems that aren't your fault at all. Is it because you work too much? He asked, and I recognized James's words coming from my son's mouth. Had he been planting these ideas already? No, sweetie, sometimes adults just can't live together anymore, even though they both love their children very much. Noah was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. Can I still see Dad? Of course you can, I assured him. Dad loves you very much, and he'll still be your dad. You'll spend time with both of us, just not at the same time. Noah threw his arms around me suddenly, burying his face in my shoulder. I don't want you to be alone, Mum, he said, his voice muffled against my sweater. I hugged him tightly, touched by his concern for me, even in his own distress. I won't be alone, sweetie. I have you, and we're going to be okay. I promise. Later that day, James came by to collect some of his things and talk to Noah. I stayed in the kitchen, giving them privacy, but keeping an ear out in case James said anything inappropriate. To his credit, he kept the conversation focused on reassuring Noah that he still loved him and would see him regularly. Before leaving, James asked to speak with me privately. I've been thinking about what happened last night, he said, his tone conciliatory. I said some things I shouldn't have. Yes, you did. I agreed, not making it easier for him. I'm staying at Alicia's for now, but I want to work out a visitation schedule for Noah, and I'm willing to be reasonable about the financial settlement if you are. His sudden reasonableness made me suspicious. Talk to my lawyer, I said simply. All communication about the divorce goes through Michael Torres from now on. James's facade of cooperation slipped slightly. Always so cold and professional, Kendra. No wonder our marriage failed. I refused to be baited. Goodbye, James. Noah will be ready for your scheduled visitation on Saturday at 10. Over the following weeks, the divorce proceedings began in earnest. As my attorney had predicted, James's financial deceptions worked strongly in my favor. The judge ordered all marital assets frozen pending final settlement, forcing James to return the money he'd hidden. Noah started seeing Dr. Williams, the child psychologist, weekly. Initially, he was withdrawn and angry, but gradually he began to open up about his feelings. Dr. Williams reported that while Noah was understandably upset about the divorce, he was adjusting relatively well. Children are remarkably resilient, she told me during one of our sessions. The most important thing is that Noah knows both his parents love him and that he's not responsible for what's happening. My relationship with my mother remained strained. She made several attempts to apologize, sending cards and calling regularly, but I maintained my distance, still too hurt by her betrayal to fully forgive her. However, I did allow her to see Noah occasionally, monitoring these visits to ensure she didn't try to influence him against me. At work, the situation with Alicia became untenable. After our confrontation in the cafeteria, she requested a transfer to another unit, which was granted quickly. I heard through hospital gossip that she and James were openly together now, though she seemed less happy than one might expect from someone who had won her man. The most surprising development came from James's mother, Teresa. She called me about 2 weeks after James moved out, asking to meet for coffee. Curious and a bit apprehensive, I agreed. Teresa had always been kind to me, though we weren't particularly close. She was a stylish, soft-spoken woman in her early 60s who doted on Noah but respected our parenting boundaries. I want you to know, she said, after we'd exchanged pleasantries, that I don't condone what James has done. His father and I raised him better than this. I was touched by her support, but unsure how to respond. Thank you, Teresa. That means a lot. James takes after his father in some unfortunate ways, she continued, stirring her coffee absently. William had affairs too. I forgave him each time, thinking it was better for James to have a stable home. Now I wonder if I just taught my son that betrayal has no consequences. The revelation about James's father surprised me. Teresa and William had always seemed like the perfect couple. You never said anything, she smiled sadly. We're from a different generation, dear. We didn't air our dirty laundry, but seeing history repeat itself with James, seeing how he's hurt you and Noah, I can't stay silent this time. Teresa became an unexpected ally, often helping with Noah when my work schedule was challenging and even testifying during the divorce proceedings about James's character when he tried to paint me as an absent mother to gain more custody. 4 months after our separation, the divorce was finalized. The settlement was largely in my favor, I kept the house, received substantial child support, and was granted primary custody of Noah, with James having visitation every other weekend and one evening per week. Financially, I was secure, but emotionally, I still had healing to do. I joined a support group for divorced women where I met others who had experienced similar betrayals. Sharing our stories and strategies for moving forward became an important part of my recovery. One evening, about 6 months after James moved out, Noah came to me with a surprising observation. We were having our nightly ritual of hot chocolate and conversation before his bedtime, something I'd instituted to ensure we had quality time together despite my work schedule. "Mum," he said, thoughtfully stirring the mini marshmallows in his mug, "I think you smile more now." Surprised, I asked, "What do you mean, sweetie? Before Dad left, you seemed sad a lot, even when you were smiling," he explained with the simple wisdom of children. "Now your smiles reach your eyes again. That's what Grandma Teresa says. You can tell a real smile because it reaches the eyes." His observation stunned me. Had I been unhappy for longer than I'd realized? Had Noah noticed what I hadn't? "Are you happier without Dad?" he asked directly. I considered how to answer honestly without disparaging James. "I'm happier being true to myself," I finally said. "Sometimes people can love each other but not be good for each other anymore. Dad and I weren't making each other happy, even though we both love you very much." Noah nodded seriously. "Tyler says his mum is happier since his dad moved out too, and they got a dog." I laughed. "Is that a hint?" He grinned. "Maybe. A small one." That conversation was a turning point. Noah was right, I was smiling more. Without the constant tension of an unhappy marriage, without James's subtle undermining of my confidence, I was rediscovering parts of myself that had been suppressed for years. I reconnected with old friends, started taking an art class I'd always been interested in, and even began dating again, though, very casually, and never introducing anyone to Noah until I was sure the relationship had potential. The most unexpected development came a year after the divorce, when Alicia contacted me out of the blue asking to meet. Curiosity once again got the better of me, and I agreed to coffee at a neutral location. She looked different. Her previously perfect makeup was minimal, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. "I wanted to apologize," she said without preamble. "What I did was unforgivable." "Why now?" I asked, genuinely curious. "James and I broke up last month," she admitted. "He's already seeing someone new, his latest real estate client." She smiled bitterly. "You were right about the pattern." I felt no satisfaction in being right, only a weary recognition of James's predictability. "I'm sorry it ended badly," I said, surprised to realize I meant it. "Don't be," Alicia said. "I needed the wake-up call." "But that's not why I wanted to meet. I have something I think you should know." She proceeded to tell me about financial discussions she'd overheard between James and his new accountant. Apparently, he'd managed to hide some assets, even from the divorce court. Armed with this information, I contacted Michael Torres again, and we were able to secure an additional settlement for Noah's benefit. The most significant healing, however, came in my relationship with my mother. About 18 months after the divorce, Linda was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. Despite our strained relationship, I couldn't turn my back on her during such a difficult time. During her treatment, we had many long conversations in hospital waiting rooms, and during her recovery at home, slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild trust. "I always thought I knew what was best for you," she admitted during one of these talks. "I pushed you toward what I thought success looked like, a prominent husband, a beautiful home. I never stopped to ask what you wanted. And I never stood up for myself," I acknowledged. "I let you and James make me doubt my own worth, my own choices." "You're standing up for yourself now," she said, reaching for my hand. "I'm proud of the woman you've become, Kendra. I should have been proud all along." 2 years after discovering James's betrayal, my life had transformed completely. Noah was thriving, doing well in school, and developing a healthy relationship with both parents, though he lived primarily with me. I had been promoted to Director of Nursing for the entire pediatric department, a position that came with better pay and more regular hours. We had moved from the colonial house to a smaller but cozier home closer to the hospital, a place that had never known James's presence and felt truly ours. And yes, we had adopted a dog, a gentle rescue mutt named Charlie, who adored Noah and slept at the foot of my bed every night. My relationship with my mother had healed to the point where we could enjoy weekly dinners together, though I maintained clearer boundaries than before. Linda had gained a new respect for me and my decisions, and I had learned to be more assertive about my needs and feelings. James continued his pattern of short-lived relationships, moving from Alicia to his real estate client, then to a yoga instructor, each woman younger than the last. Noah sometimes came home from visitations with stories that made me worry about the example James was setting, but I was careful never to criticize his father in front of him. Instead, I focused on modeling healthy relationships and self-respect. Looking back at the woman I was before the wife who believed her husband's lies, the daughter who accepted her mother's criticism, the nurse who put everyone's needs before her own, I hardly recognized her. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately forced me to rebuild myself stronger and wiser than before. The pain hadn't disappeared completely. There were still moments when a memory would catch me off guard, when Noah would say something that reminded me painfully of James, when the unfairness of it all would overwhelm me briefly. But those moments grew fewer and farther between as time passed. What remained was a profound gratitude for the life I'd rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal, a life that was authentically mine, shaped by my own choices rather than others' expectations. A life where I modeled strength and self-worth for my son so that he would grow up knowing how to treat others and how to expect to be treated in return. In the end, the greatest lesson from this painful chapter was simple but powerful. True happiness comes not from meeting others' expectations, but from being true to yourself even when that means standing alone. It's a lesson I wish I'd learned earlier, but one I'm grateful to have learned at all. And it's a lesson I'll carry forward into whatever the future holds for Noah and me. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal? What gave you the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found my journey meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that there's life, beautiful, authentic life after betrayal. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is not defined by those who failed to see it.